I never thought I'd be posting on here, but I can't sleep, and I need to get this off my chest. What happened to me 3 weeks ago still makes my hands shake when I think about it. I was desperate for work after losing my restaurant job, and when I saw the ad for a night caregiver position paying double the usual rate, I should have known something was off. The family said their grandmother, Eleanor, had dementia and just needed someone to watch her overnight while they slept. They made it sound so simple. Just sit there, make sure she doesn't wander, help her to the bathroom if needed. The daughter, Patricia, seemed normal enough when she interviewed me over the phone. She explained that Eleanor sometimes got confused at night, but was mostly harmless. They'd had trouble keeping caregivers because of the overnight hours, she said. I needed the money badly, so I agreed to start that same night. Patricia met me at the door of this old Victorian house around 9 p.m., and I immediately noticed how tired she looked, like she hadn't slept in weeks. The house felt wrong from the moment I stepped inside. It wasn't just old, it was heavy, if that makes sense. The air felt thick and stale, even though Patricia had obviously been cleaning. She rushed through, showing me around, pointing out Eleanor's bedroom, the bathroom, the kitchen where I could make coffee. Eleanor was already in bed, she said, and probably wouldn't wake up until morning. Patricia seemed eager to get to her own room, barely making eye contact as she explained the basic routine. She handed me a list of emergency numbers and her cell, your phone number, then paused at the bottom of the stairs. If she gets agitated, just try to calm her down with soft words, she said. Sometimes she thinks strangers are intruders. Then she practically ran upstairs, and I heard her bedroom door close with a definitive click. I settled into the living room chair with my book, thinking this would be an easy night. The house was quiet, except for the old heating system making those settling noises old houses make. I actually started to relax, thinking I'd lucked into the easiest job ever. That feeling lasted about 2 hours. Around 11:30, I heard shuffling upstairs, soft footsteps like someone walking in slippers. I figured Eleanor was just getting up to use the bathroom, which Patricia had warned me might happen, but the footsteps kept going, back and forth across what sounded like the hallway above me. Then they stopped completely. I waited, listening, but heard nothing else. I went back to my book, but I couldn't concentrate anymore. Something about those footsteps felt deliberate, not like the confused wandering you'd expect from someone with dementia. About 20 minutes later, I heard a door creak open upstairs, then more footsteps, but these were different, slower, more careful. I called out softly, "Eleanor, are you okay up there?" No answer. The footsteps stopped again. I decided I should probably go check on her, make sure she hadn't fallen or gotten confused about where the bathroom was. I climbed the narrow staircase, and the old wood creaked under my feet, no matter how carefully I stepped. The upstairs hallway was dark, except for a small nightlight plugged into the wall. Patricia's door was closed, and I could hear what sounded like a white noise machine running inside her room. Eleanor's bedroom door was wide open, which struck me as odd since Patricia had said she always kept it closed. I peeked inside and saw the bed was empty, covers thrown back messily. "Eleanor?" I whispered, stepping into the room. That's when I noticed the smell, not the usual old person smell you might expect, but something metallic and sharp that made my nose wrinkle. The room felt cold, much colder than the rest of the house, and I could see my breath forming little puffs in the air. I checked the attached bathroom, but it was empty too. Now I was starting to worry. A confused elderly woman wandering around. A big old house in the middle of the night was exactly the kind of thing I was supposed to prevent. I called her name again, louder this time, and started checking the other rooms upstairs. There was another bedroom that looked like it hadn't been used in years, covered furniture and everything. A small office with boxes stacked everywhere. But no Eleanor. I was about to go downstairs to look for her when I heard Patricia's door open behind me. "Is everything all right?" she asked. but her voice sounded strange, almost like she was expecting something to be wrong. "I can't find Eleanor," I told Patricia, trying to keep my voice calm. "Her bed is empty, and I've checked all the rooms up here." Patricia's face went pale, and she grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks. "Did you check the closets?" she asked, urgently. She likes to hide in closets when she gets confused. That seemed like a reasonable explanation, so we started opening every closet door upstairs. Most were just full of old clothes and linens, but when we got to the hall closet, Patricia stopped dead. She was staring at something inside, and her hand was trembling as she pointed. There, crouched in the back corner behind some winter coats, was Eleanor. But she wasn't confused or scared like you'd expect from someone with dementia. She was perfectly still, watching us with these sharp, alert eyes that didn't match what Patricia had told me about her condition. When she saw us looking at her, she smiled this weird smile that made my stomach drop. "Hello, dear," she said to me in a voice that was completely clear and coherent. "I've been waiting for you." Patricia immediately started trying to coax her out, using that sing-song voice people use with children, but Eleanor ignored her completely. She kept staring at me. We finally got Eleanor back to her room, though she moved with a strange reluctance, like she was disappointed the game was over. Patricia tucked her into bed and gave her what she said was medication to help her sleep. But I noticed Eleanor palmed the pills instead of swallowing them. Patricia didn't seem to notice, or maybe she was too flustered to pay attention. "She gets confused about who people are," Patricia explained as we went back downstairs. "Sometimes she thinks caregivers are burglars or something. Don't take it personally." But I couldn't shake the feeling that Eleanor had been completely aware of who I was and what she was doing. The way she'd said, "I've been waiting for you," it wasn't confused rambling, it was deliberate. Patricia made us both some tea and apologized over and over, saying this kind of thing didn't happen often. She seemed genuinely upset, wringing her hands and pacing around the kitchen. "Maybe I should stay up with you for a while," she offered, but I could see how exhausted she was. I told her I'd be fine, that I understood now what to expect. She looked relieved and headed back upstairs around 1 a.m. I settled back into the living room chair, but this time I positioned it so I could see the staircase. I wasn't taking any chances. The next few hours were the longest of my life. I tried to read, tried to scroll through my phone, but I couldn't focus on anything. Every little sound made me jump. The house settling, the refrigerator humming, even my own breathing seemed too loud. Around 3 a.m., I started hearing those footsteps again, but this time they were different. Instead of the shuffling I'd heard before, these were deliberate steps, like someone walking with purpose. They moved from Eleanor's room to the hallway, then stopped right at the top of the stairs. I stared up at the darkness, waiting for her to come down, but she didn't. The footsteps just stopped. After about 10 minutes of complete silence, I heard what sounded like drawers being opened and closed very quietly, then cabinet doors. It was like she was searching for something specific and trying not to make noise while doing it. I knew I should go up there and check on her, but honestly, I was scared. Something about the way she'd looked at me in that closet had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. I kept telling myself she was just a confused old woman, but my gut was telling me something else entirely. Around 4 a.m., the noises stopped completely. The house went dead silent in a way that felt unnatural. Even the heating system seemed to stop humming. I sat there in that chair, straining to hear anything, but it was like the whole house was holding its breath. That's when I noticed the smell again, that metallic scent I'd detected in Eleanor's room earlier, but now it was downstairs with me, getting stronger by the minute. I looked around the living room, trying to figure out where it was coming from, when I heard a soft sound behind me, like fabric brushing against wood. I turned around slowly and my heart nearly stopped. Eleanor was standing at the bottom of the stairs, but she wasn't wearing the nightgown Patricia had put her in. She was fully dressed in dark clothes, and she was holding something in her right hand that caught the dim light from the street lamp. Outside, it took me a second to realize what it was, and when I did, my blood went cold. She was holding a kitchen knife, one of the big ones you use for cutting meat. And she was smiling that same weird smile from before. "Eleanor," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "what are you doing with that knife?" She tilted her head like she was considering the question, but never stopped smiling. "I'm protecting my home," she said, and her voice was crystal clear. Again, no confusion, no dementia symptoms at all. "You don't belong here." I slowly stood up from the chair, my legs shaking so bad I wasn't sure they'd hold me. "Patricia hired me to take care of you," I said, backing toward the front door. "I'm here to help." Eleanor laughed, and it was the most chilling sound I've ever heard. Not the laugh of a confused elderly woman, but something cold and calculating. "Patricia doesn't know what's best for me," she said, taking a step closer. "None of them do, but I know what's best for people like you." The way she said "people like you" made my skin crawl. I realized she was between me and the front door now, and the back door was through the kitchen, which meant I'd have to get past her. My phone was in my purse on the coffee table, but there was no way I could reach it without getting closer to her. I was trapped, and she knew it. I tried to think of what Patricia had said about calming her down with soft words, but looking at Eleanor's face, I knew that wasn't going to work. This wasn't dementia or confusion. This was something else entirely. "I'm going to call Patricia," I said, hoping maybe the mention of her granddaughter would snap her out of whatever this was. But Eleanor just shook her head. "Patricia's sleeping very soundly tonight," she said, and the way she said it made me wonder if Patricia was actually okay upstairs. "She took her special medicine before bed. She won't be waking up for a very long time." My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Eleanor took another step toward me, raising the knife slightly. "You came into my house," she said, her voice getting harder. "You sat in my chair, you touched my things. People like you think you can just walk into other people's lives and take over." I had no idea what she was talking about, but I could see in her eyes that she believed every word. She wasn't seeing me as a caregiver. She was seeing me as some kind of threat that needed to be eliminated. That's when my survival instincts finally kicked in. I grabbed the heavy glass ashtray from the coffee table and threw it at her as hard as I could. It hit her shoulder and she stumbled backward, more surprised than hurt, but it gave me the opening I needed. I bolted toward the kitchen, hoping to get to the back door. Eleanor was right behind me, and I could hear her breathing getting heavier. The knife scraped against the doorframe as she followed me through the kitchen doorway. I fumbled with the back door lock, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the deadbolt. Behind me, I heard Eleanor say, "You can't leave, not yet, we're not finished." Her voice was getting closer, and I knew if I didn't get this door open in the next few seconds, I was going to die in that house. The lock finally turned, and I yanked the door open so hard it slammed against the wall. I ran out into the backyard in my socks, not caring about the cold concrete or the gravel cutting into my feet. I could hear Eleanor in the doorway behind me, but when I looked back, she had stopped at the threshold. She was just standing there in the light from the kitchen, still holding that knife, watching me with those sharp eyes. I ran around to the front of the house where my car was parked, fumbling in my pockets for my keys. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped them twice before I managed to get the car door open. As I started the engine, I looked up at the house and saw Eleanor standing in the front window, still watching me. She raised her hand and waved, like we were old friends saying goodbye. I peeled out of there so fast I left rubber on the street. I drove straight to the nearest 24-hour diner and sat in the parking lot for 2 hours, trying to process what had just happened. I kept thinking about Patricia upstairs, wondering if she was okay, if I should call the police. But what would I tell them? That an elderly woman with dementia had threatened me with a kitchen knife. It sounded crazy even to me, and I'd lived through it. Around 6 a.m., I finally worked up the courage to call Patricia's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. I tried the house phone, and it rang and rang with no answer. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong, and I should have called 911 right then. But I was scared and confused, and I just wanted to go home and pretend the whole thing had been a nightmare. I didn't call the police that morning, and I've regretted it ever since. I went home, took a hot shower, and tried to convince myself that maybe I'd overreacted, that Eleanor was just confused and scared. But I couldn't stop thinking about how clear her eyes had been, how purposeful her movements were. 2 days later, I finally called Patricia's number again, and this time a man answered. He said he was Patricia's brother and asked who I was. When I explained about the caregiver job, there was a long silence. Then he told me something that made my blood run cold. Patricia had been found unconscious in her bed that morning, apparently from an overdose of sleeping pills. She was in the hospital, stable, but sedated. Eleanor was missing. The police had been looking for her since Patricia was discovered, but it was like she'd vanished into thin air. The brother asked me if I'd seen anything unusual that night, and I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he said something I'll never forget. "You're the fourth caregiver this has happened to. The others didn't get away." He explained that Eleanor had been diagnosed with something called antisocial personality disorder years ago, not dementia. The family had been trying to get her proper help, but she was clever about hiding her condition from doctors and social workers. That was 3 weeks ago, and Eleanor still hasn't been found. The brother sent me copies of police reports from the previous incidents. One caregiver had been found tied up in the basement, another had been stabbed in the arm before escaping, and a third had simply disappeared and was never seen again. Apparently, Eleanor had convinced Patricia that she was getting better, that the dementia story would make it easier to find help. Patricia had no idea what her grandmother was really capable of. I've moved twice since then and changed my phone number, but I still wake up in the middle of the night thinking I hear footsteps. Sometimes I catch myself checking closets before I go to bed, and I always keep a knife in my nightstand drawer. Now, the police say she's probably moved on to another state, that people like Eleanor don't usually stay in one place after something like this. But I can't shake the feeling that she's still out there somewhere, still playing her games with new victims. If you ever see a job posting for a night caregiver that pays way too much for what seems like simple work, please think twice. And if you do take it, don't let them tell you it's just dementia. Sometimes the monsters are perfectly sane, and that's what makes them so dangerous.